second, first prize. And the last speaker, who's Jennifer Miksch, and she's a German national. She's a graduate student in international affairs at the Geneva Institute of International and Development Studies. She holds a Bachelor in Politics, Law and Economics from the University of Erfurt in 2010. She did an exchange semester at Hong Kong Baptist University and has a huge list of very impressive internships at the German Embassy in Buenos Aires, for example, research assistant at the University of Erfurt, Star Publishing, Lufthansa, and so on. And she also is an acting student representative, which I think is very important to mention, especially in for an academic audience. On the private side, one of the toughest challenges so far, you said, was actually to do horseback riding all through the Andes Mountains. And that's very, very impressive, actually, for somebody to be able to do that. Her essay is entitled A Three-Step Model to Overcome Negative Implications of brackets, female, brackets, risk aversion in entrepreneurship. And the jury notes about this particular essay that it touches on a very important topic of female entrepreneurship. While we know it's clearly important to do something about it, we always need to be remembered about the fact that most entrepreneurs tend to be men, or very often, at least in the academic scene, we tend to think about entrepreneurs as men rather than females. And it will show us something entirely different, and it will also show some problems that we have in the existing logic. It's an excellent build-up of the argument within the presentation, and you have a very good anchoring in the essay of a process model that might have many practical implications, also perhaps beyond entrepreneurship. Jennifer, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor von Krock, for this very nice introduction. I also wanted to use the chance to thank the organization team. So far it was exceptional to be here. Well, I was asked in the format of the symposium by Professor von Krock to mention what has inspired me to choose this specific topic of female risk aversion. And I must admit I cannot really say, because was it first my family, me being the only girl surrounded by almost same-aged cousins and uncles and always feeling equal until I left to discover the real world? Was it second my teenage readings of Simone de Beauvoir, the biography of Hillary Clinton, and then looking at real-life newspapers and seeing the reality? Was it a workshop by a consultancy I visited about female leadership where I met inspiring, really great women? Don't misunderstand me, but it actually made me rethink stereotyping by these women themselves afterwards. Or was it fourth, last but not least, a very inspiring class I took at the Graduate Institute about gender studies, which was my one and only class I ever took about this topic, with a very diverse group of students and a very good discussions. And I would say it was all mentioned, plus looking around and seeing the ratio of male and female participants in events like this. Everyday situations like this, even though the symposium might not be an everyday situation, made me rethink femaleness. So what does femaleness have to do with risk aversion? Well, regarding future economic and social challenges for each state to sustain its position, strengthening the competitiveness and innovativeness of the system as a whole is crucial. Using the very own human resources in an effective way, as Klaus Schwab pointed out, is essential. Therefore, I will focus the presentation on a significantly high part of society, namely around 50% women. As a specificity, I would like to focus on a field especially connected to risk, entrepreneurship. Well, some of you might wonder what Klaus Schwab actually said. I guess all of you know he's the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. And he said that recovery of the recession and innovation will require new, unique ideas. The most important determinant of a country in competitiveness is its human talent. And in many parts of the developed world, women actually account for more than half of the graduates of colleges and universities. Women thus constitute a burgeoning portion of the talent pool available to companies today. This is why I want to introduce a three-step model to overcome negative implications of female risk aversion in entrepreneurship. As introduced in the late 1960s, most people in wealthy societies tend to suppress risk-taking. Plus, in the past decades, we have seen an increase in research about gender differences in behavior. Articles like "Do Women Lack Ambition?" or "Male versus Female Leadership Differences" popped up. In this context, I found a thought-provoking Harvard Business Review article discussing women and the labyrinth of leadership. The article found that women have to cope with prejudices that benefit men and penalize women. It did not specifically mention risk, but I interviewed several managers in different fields, and I found that risk aversion was actually one of the major feminine characteristics mentioned. So taken that women in general are more risk averse, and wealthy societies in general suppress risk, what if we put together those two fields of studies? And how can we overcome negative effects? Well, drawing back to my original topic, I would like to define what an entrepreneur is. According to Schumpeter in 1934, entrepreneurs are people who combine resources in a new way or create new products, markets, or services. Well, I would simply say today, entrepreneurs are risk takers. But how does an entrepreneur look like? An entrepreneur is powerful, dominant, influential, and knows what he wants. An entrepreneur, he is mainly a man, because women are soft, strive for harmony, and try to solve conflicts through communication instead of confrontation. These are quotes I found in academic articles. I didn't make them up. Well, so far the stereotype. But are women actually more risk-averse than men? From my very own female perspective, I know both risk-averse women and men, either in wealthy Europe, where I'm from, and in less wealthy parts of the world, where I used to live for a couple of months. Any long-term prediction is a wild guess, because stereotyping, as the question for this presentation suggests, is wrong. Well, I interviewed a male investment banker from a leading bank, and I found rather outstanding answers. It's not an incorrect statement. They are more risk-averse. Women seem less qualified and interested in risky sectors like trading and hedging. They are more suited for advisory investment banking. Most women say themselves they are too conscious or not scrupulous enough, and I believe that makes sense. There is a generical difference, which of course has long-term consequences. Well, to get back into the heart of the debate, I want to talk about risk. A slightly obvious business basic even a female political scientist like me understands, and we discussed this in the past days. The higher the risk, the higher is the potential outcome. Well, consequently, lower risks have lower expected returns. Also, coming from risk and to become an entrepreneur requires an important step in the middle, pitching the idea to an investor. So on the one hand side, we have the female entrepreneur who has an average 20 slides business plan for second, their product, for which they third, want money. On the other side, we have the investors. Those could be VCs, business angels, etc. They have money they want to increase by funding businesses for which they have second, third, and fixed expectations, beside a brief servant slide pitch, of which most important is the person and the team, actually even more important than the idea. So women have to understand, they pitch primarily themselves, not their 7 to 20 slides business plans. But what is actually more interesting is that most women do not even take that step. Most women fear external investment. They do not pitch. Now, after stating some facts, I would like to come back to my interview, which actually turned into a discussion with the investment banker. My response to his simple biological reasoning was, at least from my opinion, more objective. Even assuming his argument is a relevant explanation for male-female differences, I deeply believe Simone de Beauvoir was right when she said, one is not born a woman, but becomes one. The gender, different from the biological sex, of a person is a social product. One is not raised a woman, but becomes one. One is raised to strive for harmony, communicate, and to be risk-averse. Well, the investment banker was not done with this argument yet. According to him, differences exist due to evolutionary reasons. Women, because they give birth, naturally carry the burden to take care for the family. Risking herself would risk a whole group of dependent others. But I was wondering, and maybe some of you could give me the answers, some men who are fathers, are you really more independent? Do you feel more independent? I think that nowadays men are not less dependent just because they don't give birth. Well, what I've found so far is women actually often are risk averse, which indeed has a significant different impact on their economic performance. But I also believe the reasons for risk aversion might not simply be biological, but social. And they might be possible to cure. And I have evidence that risk aversion is not a female characteristic, but can also be male. So this is why I want to turn to my 3-step model, so introduced in the beginning, to overcome negative implications of so-called female natural risk aversion, which might change the economy and society in the long term significantly, at least I hope so. Well, the first step is to recognize differences apart from stereotyping of each individual. What I mean is to not put people into boxes simply labeled male or female, but think bigger, think in more boxes. The second step is based on a statement of Christine Lagarde in 2010, it might also be 2009. If Lehman Brothers would have been Lehman Sisters, the financial crisis would have looked different. So you need, in the second step, you need to recognize that differences can be either positive or negative, depending on the situation you are in. So risk aversion, both in men and women, can be a useful skill at a specific point in the life cycle of a company, or even the economy as a whole. According to a CEO I interviewed, specific points in the life cycle of a company require different levels of risk-taking, especially during phases of restructuring. So if you want to come to a macro level, equally different economic and social situations might require more awareness and less risk-taking, such as in an economic crisis. Now I would like to come to my third step, take action. Appoint people according to their specific characteristics, and future challenges can be tackled effectively. While this might sound very easy, I mean, to wrap it up again, think in more than just 2 boxes, male but female, think in more boxes, have different characteristics. One of those boxes can be called risk averse. And then in the second step, recognize that these boxes could be actually positive and useful. And in the third step, take action. It sounds easy, but it hasn't happened yet. Why? Will this model be successful? Hopefully. But nothing has ever been changed, either in society or economy, without trying. Thank you very much.